with all of the craziness, all of the insanity coming out of the maker of Firefox, out of the Mozilla Foundation over the last few years, many of you have asked a very simple and obvious question. Is any taxpayer money going to fund any of the insanity from the makers of Firefox? It's a reasonable question, and it's one that I've had as well. And it turns out that the answer is, oh, yes. In fact, the United States government, the National Science Foundation, which is a part of the federal government, awarded a $1 million grant to the Mozilla Foundation just last October. And I dug into exactly what that grant is for, because considering all of the craziness going on at Mozilla, it seems reasonable to ask, how is that money being spent? They're facing massive layoffs. They're on their third round of layoffs in the last year. They've got a potential loss of over 80% of their revenue looming just a few months out. They've had almost Game of Thrones style changes of leadership and fights internally. They've got brand new board chair people that are run by operatives from the Democratic Party, including people who specifically were executives at the Democratic National Committee and people who worked for both Biden and Obama. I'm like, okay, craziness is afoot. And of course, a lot of you will remember last November when Mozilla hosted their feminist, decolonial, LGBTQIA plus climate justice using artificial intelligence event. That's a mouthful. And it's actually a thing they did. This is not parody. Though if I were to create parody, it would not be as ridiculous as this. They held this big event at a giant resort in Africa where they flew a bunch of people in, spent a ridiculous amount of money on feminist, decolonial, LGBTQ, blah, 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 climate justice using AI. None of that makes any sense. And they promoted anti-capitalism and Marxism and all sorts of other strange things that have nothing to do with web browsing. So what exactly is the federal government paying Mozilla $1 million to do? This all comes from the National Science Foundation, right? Which has a very big budget. I mean, they spend they have a budget of north of $1 billion every year. And what Mozilla is getting is a small slice of that massive, massive pie. It's absolutely huge. But the good news is all that information is more or less pretty public. So I went to usaspending.gov and did some digging around. So this particular grant started on October 1st of this last year, 2024, and is set to fund operations of the work that's being outlined, which we'll get into, through 2027. So basically for another 2.5 years from now. So what is this exactly? Well, if you go to the usspending.gov website, you are greeted with, I'm not kidding, a wall of all uppercase text. If those of you watching the video, you see the information we've got. It is obscene. It is poorly formatted. There are no paragraphs. There are no links. There are no bullets. There are no headings. There's no structure to any of it. There's not even complete and full sentences. It's almost like someone was typing out an SOS in Morse code, didn't have time to get and to organize their thoughts, but they made the message crazy long anyway, put it all in uppercase, and filled it with jargon and buzzwords. It's insane to read through it, but I invite you to go read it for yourself. Again, it's public information. I picked out a few of the key phrases so you can get an idea of what we're talking about here. This was a $1 million grant. Taxpayer money sent to Mozilla for the purpose of helping to develop inclusive American language technologies. Inclusive American language technologies to create training data sets for speech recognition for 3 underrepresented American sociolinguistic contexts. Yeah, I love that because it tells you a lot of specifics without telling you anything at all. A socio-elect, a code-switching language context, an indigenous language, inclusive speech-to-text technology. They also called out the idea that communities will co-create these data sets, and they will include underrepresented language variants with improved community representation within STEAM professions, and they will help to mitigate data set biases. Now, if you're reading through that and you've made it this far, and your eyes haven't begun bleeding like you've got Ebola or something like that, I applaud you, because I had to read through this gosh darn thing so many times before I finally understood what in the tarnations that they're even talking about. What they're talking about is something called Common Voice. And this particular $1 million grant is not for Common Voice as a whole. It's not for running Common Voice. Common Voice is, just to back up a little bit, it is a speech to text database of spoken word. So the idea, and it's debatable at how well it's working, but the idea is you have a large collection of open source and freely licensed data of audio files of people speaking specific phrases to assist in speech-to-text technology in as wide a variety of languages possible, right? Cool. All right, I'm on board with all that. That sounds fine. I like speech-to-text technology. I like the idea that we all have a free set of openly licensed data that we can all work from and contribute to. That seems handy and helpful here. And when you look through the announcements relating to Common Voice from Mozilla, you see that as soon as they got this $1 million grant, they began changing their account systems. They moved things away from GitHub, where they had organized before, and they put it all into Mozilla account systems and using Mozilla only authentication. They started making some changes, but there's no other announcements. In fact, Mozilla made absolutely no announcement, no press release, no blog post, not even a footnote mention, as far as I can tell, that they received a $1 million grant from the National Science Foundation. I can find no article about this, no blog post about this, no podcast about this, absolutely nothing. It has flown entirely under the radar. And after reading through and rereading through the description from the National Science Foundation, I am left with a lot of questions. For one, how will the money be spent? The National Science Foundation does not outline it, and the proposal from Mozilla Foundation is not public anywhere that I have been able to find. I have asked. Also, what are the 3 underrepresented American sociolinguistic contexts? Because this proposal to the National Science Foundation centers on that. 3 underrepresented American sociolinguistic contexts, language variants. Those are the things, 3 of them, specifically 3. What 3? What 3? There's no statement anywhere that says what that is. The grant period, just another question. The grant period started last October. We are just a few days shy of it being 6 months, half a year since this grant was initially awarded. What has been done since then to advance whatever those 3 underrepresented sociolinguistic American contexts are? What has happened in that time? It's a fairly reasonable set of questions to ask, right? I mean, realistically, I don't think these should be hard questions. Not at all. So obviously I asked. I reached out to Mozilla. I reached out to the Mozilla Foundation. I reached out to the Common Voice people at the Mozilla Foundation directly and got no response. Total silence. Not surprising, because I'm a journalist and they don't respond to actual journalists. So what did I do? I headed over to their Discord channel. Yeah, every group and their mama has a Discord channel nowadays, and the Mozilla Common Voice organization is no exception to that. So I joined on up and I posted over there, Hi all. I'm working on a piece which touches on Common Voice, and I've reached out to Mozilla without a response. Figured someone here may know the answers. I was wondering if anyone could provide additional details relating to the National Science Foundation grant awarded here. Specifically, what will the grant be funding? The grant description mentions 3 underrepresented American sociolinguistic contexts, which will be worked on. Are there any details around what those are? I'm curious. Many thanks. If anyone knows the answers or may know who would be the best to ask. Pretty polite ask, right? No response. Absolutely no response. Total radio silence. I done been ghosted. I done been ghosted, ladies and gentlemen. Though, as of this recording, I haven't been banned from their Discord channel yet, which is a pretty good move direction. Normally at this point, they would have already banned me just for saying, hi, all ban. That's how most of these organizations work. So here we are. How much money was that again? $1,051,000 or $1,051,622. I mean, it's a pretty specific amount, right? They clearly had it all budgeted. They could say, here's where all the money's going to be used for. And since it's all 100% taxpayer money, right? 100% taxpayer money. I want to know where that's going to. I paid for this. I did. Me. The amount sent to them was large enough that after we divide that among every tax-paying man, woman, and child, I sent some part to this. Maybe not a lot. I sent a very small amount of money to this, but I spent money on this. If you're in America, so did you. I just want to know what they're spending it on. That's all I want to know. Now, is what they're spending on valuable? I don't know, maybe. It's legitimately hard to say. The core concept of the Common Voice project is not a bad concept. It has actual use and it has actual value. Is it going to that project in such a way that the people of the United States will see a real tangible return on their investment because the National Science Foundation invested in them? I'd like to know that. I'd like to look at the information. I'd like to look at the full proposal, including the full budget, and make that decision. There is no reason on God's green earth why Mozilla should not have shouted this from the rooftops back in October when it was awarded, but they did not. Why? Why have they been trying very, very hard to keep it quiet that they received this $1 million? Where is the money going to? Where has it already gone? What is it being spent on? And what will it be spent on over the next year and a half? I would like to know the answer to that. I do not believe that Mozilla will give us the answer to that. I believe they will stonewall and try and avoid answering the most basic question of financial transparency in the United States. They receive taxpayer money. What did they use it for? The information that is provided here is absolutely not sufficient to understand what they are actually doing. Because what they've stated here, honestly, I have no way of verifying it because it's mostly garbledy-gook and non-specific. And the things it says it does, it says it can measure in three specific things they're improving, and they don't tell us what those things are. I smell something. I smell something and I don't like it. So I'm going to be following up on this naturally. I've also reached out to, of course, the National Science Foundation, because I would like more of this information as well. I will be filing, I have not filed yet, but in the next day, I will be filing a Freedom of Information Act request with the National Science Foundation. And we will see how far that goes, because that's what we got to do, right? We got to hold these people to the fire and shout about this ridiculous amount of waste that's going on and the ridiculous things that Mozilla is doing. I would like to know for a fact that this $1 million of taxpayer money is not in any way going towards things like feminist, decolonial, LGBTQIA plus climate justice using AI events. Because the Mozilla Foundation, as far as I can tell, got $1 million and a few weeks later flew off to hold a party in Africa to promote Marxism and anti-capitalism at an extremely capitalistic luxury resort pushing climate justice using AI. Are they related? Timing-wise, yes. Timing-wise, they're related. One came like 30 days after another. Less than 30 days after another. I would really, really like to know exactly where every penny went. So we'll see. Thank you. Where's that other slide at? Thank you to everyone who supports the Lunduke Journal. I couldn't do this without you. No big tech sponsors here. No big tech advertising money coming in here. This is sponsored. This is supported entirely from subscribers like you. So go to lunduke.com. There's 4 different sites you can subscribe to the Lunduke Journal on financially: Locals, Substack, Patreon, or Itch. Whatever you prefer, however you prefer to do it, man, it helps. It keeps big tech free, truly independent journalism alive. So we can actually hold these foundations, these big tech companies, their feet to the fire. Thank you for allowing us to do this. I couldn't do it without you, and no one else is doing it. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, lunduke.com, boys and girls, nerds and nerdettes across the inner tubes, I do declare, end broadcast.